Okay. This is gonna be a little interview. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this very special interview brought by the LFSF Animation Club. So today we have an incredible opportunity to explore how culture, face, and storytelling shape character design in animation and video games. So our guest is Sai Siddhartha Maram, a PhD researcher at UC Santa Cruz, whose work focuses on how culture and religion influence the creation of characters in interactive media. He's also deeply involved in developing collaborative games that engage with themes of faith and storytelling. His insights will help us understand the research and creative process behind bringing culturally rich characters to life. Thank you so much for being here. We got your permission to record. Thank you very much. Okay. Hello. The members are starting to come in. First for the interview, we'd like to start with studies and inspiration. So
Mhm.
we can start with the first question. Would you like to come listen? So this is Sai Siddhartha, who's the PhD researcher I talked about. So the first question would be, can you tell us about your academic journey and what led you to study the intersection of culture, faith, and games? And what specific aspects of culture and religious studies do you focus on when analyzing video games and animations?
Yeah. I'm a computer science student by background as my undergrad. But then I slowly started moving into video games because I wanted to understand how humans and computers interact. And one of the best ways humans and computers interact is through games. Like almost everybody plays games in some way. Um, yeah, in that context, I started looking into what are factors which inspire people to play games, and then we started looking at culture and faith and how there are nuances in video games which we don't realize, but they're heavily influenced by culture. Like, for example, choose your avatar. That's possibly the first statement you get in every game. But the term avatar itself is a borrowed concept from Hinduism or Buddhism. Things like respawn and re-death, like death, like in video games, you die and then you come back and respawn, which is not an Abrahamic concept, but it's mostly a Southeast Asian concept where they believe in rebirth, respawning. So all these little things kind of inspired me to see how most of the fundamental blocks in video games are inspired from culture and religion. I think that's how it actually started. And then we started looking into how else does religion influence culture, and then we started looking much more into it. Yeah.
That's really interesting. I didn't know that. Do you want to ask a question? Uh, Maybe so more about culture, faith, and conception?
This one?
Yeah.
So, how do different cultures and religions influence the character design in games and animation? And
Yeah, so it's pretty interesting you ask this because there's a lot of talk even in GDC, which is the Game Developer Conference, which happens in San Francisco, how different faiths and culture influence the character design and the costumes and the fashion. For example, Sony launched a Spider-Man game a couple of years ago where there was a woman wearing the hijab, and how generally we don't see that in games, but then we've slowly started seeing people acknowledging how different cultures and different religions have a set of dressing practices or practices which are very local to their faith, and they've been transformed into video games. For instance, there's this game called Hitman in Bombay. And then you see like the antagonist in the game actually wears like orange color saffron clad costume, which is again very symbolic of Hinduism. And you see a lot more games. Like, for example, there was an Assassin's Creed version where it had the Sikh Empire, and you can see them wearing the turban and actually playing part of the game. And further, just building on Assassin's Creed itself, like in the Islamic period, there's this game. It's located in Persia. In Assassin's Creed, even the latest one, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, is also located in Persia. You can see all the NPCs pretty much dressed in the hijab or in traditional Islamic attire. So you can, what I like to think of it is the video games are a reflection, or it's a new way of telling stories. Like the TV or the news channel or the newspapers, video games today are like the newest way of communicating stories. And to be authentic in themselves, they need to acknowledge the presence and existence of religion. Even characters need to follow some sense of faith because they are real. They're storytelling avatars. So then you can see a lot of these characters taking in practices, not just through like clothes, but like hand gestures characters. Or, for example, in the again building on the Spider-Man concept, Spider-Man is supposed to save a woman, and but she's wearing the hijab. An Islamic woman, there's this whole thing where like men don't touch women in Islam. So then Spider-Man is actually conscious of that, and instead of holding her and lifting her away, he actually puts her in like a little truck or something and then takes her away. So just being very mindful of the different religious faiths and how they translate into animation or they translate into the game mechanics itself is pretty interesting these days. Yeah.
I didn't know that about Spider-Man eyes. That's really cool. Go through you ask the question.
Sure. Mention working on collaborative games that engage people with faith and religion. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so there are a lot of games, like for example, Call of Duty, for instance, it's a very popular game. Previously, what happened is Call of Duty released a version in the Middle East. Video games typically stereotype certain cultures for certain practices. But what you're doing is like when you put a lot of people in a particular physical or a virtual space which mimics the physical space. People are exploring streets of like Iran, or people are exploring streets of Iraq or Pakistan. And similarly, like the games like Smite, which include a lot of different gods from different pantheons. Like you have Shiva, Rama, and etc. from the Hindu mythology. You have Jesus, like Jews and other characters from the other Abrahamic religions. You have gods from the Mesopotamian mythology, and all of these kind of come together in a colosseum and they fight. For somebody like who doesn't understand or who does not know Greek mythology from the past, for me it's very new to find these gods and understand what their capabilities are. So religion as a way fundamentally is collaborative in nature. Like people come together to church on Sundays. People go to the mosque on Fridays, right? People go to temples. So religion fundamentally is a social setting and a collaborative practice. Video games are in a position where they're erasing those boundaries, where different faiths, it's not just all the Muslims are going to the mosque on Friday or the Christians are going to the church. But when you're playing games, people of different religions and faith come together to play a collaborative game, and they're learning different practices of other religions. If you go to Reddit and kind of look at these multiplayer games which engage faith, you see like if it's Diwali or Christmas, you see people who do not actually practice Christmas kind of wishing each other Merry Christmas because now they're familiar with friends and players who belong to that particular faith. For instance, like if it's Christmas, I see like Call of Duty release a new skin or a new map, which is like Christmas themed. So animators have to like animate the map in a way, such a way that it's reflecting Christmas. Even though I don't practice Christmas, I'm not a Christian, I'm still engaging in that whole activity where I'm playing those maps. I might even purchase a skin or a gun in the game. So previously religion was very confined and esoteric to particular religions, but today with the games being more available, accessible to people across borders, it's just becoming a very nice space, collaborative, where people are learning. It has its own negative sides of things, like it can get toxic sometimes, but these are the two directions in which I see collaborative play being engaged with religion at this point. Yeah.
Okay, we're at the interview with Mr. Sai Siddhartha. So about religion and faith. That was really interesting. Do you think video games can help bridge cultural gaps and foster greater understanding between different communities? Like, so as you said, like some people would still like, since it's like a community, but and like, what do these games aim to achieve?
Yeah. If you look at religion historically, it's been a very great mobilization force. Like culture and faith has been very mobilizing. Like people do things because their community has told them to do something like that. It influences politics, it influences geographies, it influences language, food, it influences a lot of things. But in the modern day, I see video games as a much more stronger mobilizing force. Like people play games, they learn about different societies, different cultures. I can sit in San Francisco and play Assassin's Creed, which is located in ancient Persia, and learn about the food there, how people talk there, right? How people greet each other. So there's a lot of learning going on coupled with play. So when you look at these two great mobilizing forces, which has influenced economies, geographies, politics, and then video games today are a new form of storytelling. They teach kids, they teach adults about different cultures, religions, societies. And when they both come together, it provides an even stronger mobilization force, right? It gives you the ability to teach people harmony. It gives the ability to teach people that, humans are same, understand the way of life in different parts of the world, sitting at your comfort in your room, right? So I think there's an opportunity where we can use these two elements because religion is very personal. People can understand, they can correlate. It's called relatedness, like you relate to the character you're playing. And when they are in a different part of the world and exploring that world, it's like you are exploring that world and you're learning much more through the game environment. It's not just the character. Like when you play any game like Assassin's Creed, Call of Duty, you're also learning from the physical space around you in the game. You look at the mosques, you look at the churches, you look at the temples. As animators, you're kind of animating these spaces. So you get inside these temples and you see, oh, what's in a synagogue, what's in a mosque, and you're learning. And then you start to realize that, okay, these people are also people and they're not much different from us. So it gives you an opportunity to promote a sense of harmony, and with a shared goal of winning the game or enjoying or having a good time. So you have shared goals, you're learning about different faiths. This is the good part of it. But then obviously there are bad people who play games and they can use this from a negative sense where they purposefully create problems in video games and they create friction between different communities and different religions. So I think it can go two ways, and this is where moderation kind of comes placed to make sure people are not being toxic. There's no like a phobia towards a particular religion. I think they're two sides of the coin, and we need to like kind of be careful about how, as designers and animators, what are we promoting, or if we're making any unintentional mistakes. So yeah, those are the two directions I feel like the whole video game setting is going with the interaction of culture, faith, and religion. Yeah.
Would you, yeah,
Do you mind if I ask like one of
of course, yeah, go ahead.
There's some video games that are just fully based, like their storyline is fully based on religion. Like there's a game, I forget what it's called, but it's like about like the Spanish church, right?
Uh-huh.
Um, and then there's like other games. There's like one called Hades. It's about like Greek mythology.
Yeah, I know Hades.
I
Yeah.
think those games always like single player, and it's like always usually violent fighting games.
Yeah, unfortunate, isn't it? Like, if you look at religion historically, right? These are communities which have preached that you should love people, you should have peace, you shouldn't do bad stuff at all. But the video games are completely opposite, like go fight with different gods. So there are two aspects to it. In video games, we call it the ludic element, things which make you play. What are things with, like, for example, in Mario Kart, the ludic element is to drive the cart, right? So that's the ludic element. So as video games, their goal is not necessarily to be nice. Their goal is to make money. Their goal is to make people have a hit of dopamine, like have a sense of enjoyment. And simulation without consequence is something which results in a great level of dopamine hit because you can't do that in real life. You can't go and hit it. You can't go and battle Greek mythology gods. You can't do that. Because you'll have consequences of doing that. But in video games, you don't have consequences, right? So for that reason, video games are really addictive because you can do things which you can't do in real life, and they let you act on do stuff which do not have consequences. So you're right. So if you look at the great stories of Greek mythology, they're often wars. Like even in most mythologies, like the Crusades, or even in Hindu mythology, the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, and they're great wars. So great wars are something you cannot have right today because you cannot go to war and you cannot have the fun of like taking people down or something. But you can do that in games. And that's the reason most of these religious games kind of involve a ludic element, and mostly that is fighting and that is like violence. Yeah, that's the reason behind it. It's not good, but yeah, it gives them money, so they continue to do that.
Mm-hmm. Does anyone else have questions? Okay, I think we may have skipped a little bit. Maybe
No worries.
what are some of the biggest challenges in respectfully integrating culture and religious themes into games and animation?
Yeah, one of the biggest challenge I see is right now is like if you look at most cultures like Islam, which is predominantly Middle East, Hinduism, Southeast Asia, These are where these two, and Christianity is, of course, across the globe, majority, but problem is when you're integrating Islam and Christianity, these are monotheistic religions. They don't have a form of God. Like you don't have a physical form. It's just believe in the concept of God. Um, but if you look at religions like Hinduism, Buddhism, they have physical forms, and they're okay to project God in the form of a comic or to give a physical face to it. But what happens is most of the game studios, they're located in Europe or in the United States, which do not have the cultural familiarity with these cultures. So they just assume what's on the internet and they don't have the ability to judge if something is sensitive or not sensitive. Is it okay if I put it or not? For example, there was Call of Duty, which released a version which had the Quran on it. They didn't know it. They didn't know that it was the Quran. Maybe they just borrowed something from somewhere and it was shown on the floor. And people were offended and they had to take it down. So this is the problem where the lack of knowledge and the lack of evaluation protocols to measure if something they show is sensitive or not is where the biggest issue comes. So where people have to mitigate it is like kind of talk with stakeholders, talk with people who are familiar with that culture, test the game with people who are familiar with that religion, and see if you know what is this offensive? Is this not offensive? But this is expensive, right? Like to get people to play your game, and then they're scared if the game gets leaked as they play. So they're scared to do that. But this is the challenge, right? To make sure things are sensitive, you need to talk to people. But talking to people is expensive, and giving them a copy of the game is dangerous. So for these reasons, there are some challenges. That's the first challenge. From the designer's point of view, it's hard for a designer to satisfy or an animator to satisfy everybody's liking, right? Something might not be offensive to me, but something might be offensive to that person. But then they change it. It's offensive to me, but not that person, vice versa, right? So there's no one size which fits all. There's no formula, which makes it even more difficult to see if something's right or wrong. So for that reason, it's very difficult for as animators to satisfy everyone, and as game designers to make sure it's sensitive to everyone. So that's the reason why this is still very vague. And the way people try to avoid it is they generally tend to avoid it by going away from practiced religions. They, like somebody mentioned, hate is Greek mythology. Nobody practices Greek mythology anymore. It's not an active religion. So they're trying to take liberty with those religions which are not active anymore. So you will see very less games trying to take a take or satire on Hinduism, Islam, or Christianity, but they go for Greek mythology or Mesopotamian mythology because nobody practices it and nobody's going to raise a protest against the game, even if they do something offensive. So these are the ways they're mitigating it, and these are also the challenges. It's an open research area, and that's what we're trying to do. But can we give guidelines? Can we give rules for designers and animators to make sure they're not so offensive, or if they make something, they're within the scope of liberty? Yeah, that's where we are right now.
So you think companies are becoming more mindful of diversity?
Absolutely, I think so, and especially with games. Previously, games was seen as a privilege to have a console at home. Was like, oh, you're rich and you have a console at home, and it's deemed to be prestigious. But now games are being democratized. You can play video games on your phone. Everybody can play video games, and the scope of which the population which is playing video games is expanding very rapidly in Africa, Southeast Asia, which are predominantly Islamic and Hindu countries. So if you want to build games which or build animation which caters to these populations, you want to make sure these games are relatable to those people. So I know what I'm playing. I'm familiar with the stories, what I'm playing. From a business point of view, that will help me sell more games. And for that purpose, design studios, animation studios are more mindful to make sure they're actually engaging with familiarity with these populations, but at the same time trying to be sensitive and sensible. Yeah.
Mhm. Maybe we could go a bit more on like your background. So could you tell us about your a little bit of what you've done in this uh like in this your study of intersection of culture, faith, and games, since like a lot of people are here now.
Yeah, sure. So my background, from an undergrad perspective, I am a computer science student. Then I worked in robotics. So that's where I started realizing people interact with technology, and I was more interested in seeing how humans interact with technology. And that's when video games started to kick in, because everybody plays video games, and there's so many different ways people interact with it. Like I mentioned before, like when you start playing a video game, you choose your avatar. The avatar is a borrowed word from Hinduism, which is a form of Lord Vishnu. And similarly, there's death and respawn. Like you're playing Mario, you fall off a bridge, and then you come back again. This is not like people don't do that. People can't die and come back. But that's only possible if you look at it from the lens of mythology or religion. So that's where I started getting intrigued. Like, how else can religion be used in video games? And then we started digging in. Then we saw fashion. We saw like like bad characters being used as evils or demons, gods being used as heroes. The hijab, the costumes, the food, the greetings. Like if you play Assassin's Creed, you will see a lot of these NPCs say "Salam alaikum," and which is again like an Islamic verse for greeting. Or if you look at games like Smite, they release games like the Dharmic Era, and there's a lot of Christian games which teach the Bible. There are a lot of games which are used in the churches. And if you look at the whole Olympics as a game, it is a game which comes from Greek mythology. So the Olympics are coming from Greek mythology. So there's so many ways games are being influenced by religion, and that's what inspired me to like, okay, can we go deeper into this? Can we help designers? Can we help animators? Can we help studios make games which are more interesting? So that's where this whole inspiration started like coming up from. And then yeah, we started looking into different aspects. For instance, we were looking at how does multiplayer influence religion? Like if I am Hindu and I'm playing a Greek god, how do I relate to that god? Right, what are different communities doing? There are Discord groups for Christian gamers. There are Discord groups for Muslim gamers where people come together and practice their faith and kind of also play games. So yeah, these are the directions we were interested in looking for.
Mm-hmm. Could you talk about some ethical considerations that game and animation creators should keep in mind when drawing inspiration from real-world cultures and beliefs?
Yeah, I think one thing designers, studios, and animators need to keep in mind is we are not the owners of that religion. We are not the custodians of it. There is a set of people who actually believe in that set of gods, practices, rituals, and for them it's important. So we are taking a liberty by actually borrowing these things even without asking them and putting them in our games. So first thing we really want to do is we want to make sure we're not offensive. We're not being cruel in terms of taking those things which are so important to them and kind of like changing, uh, making it funny. For example, it's like a flag, right? Like there's, if we have our own country's flag and we all take a lot of pride in it, and we would feel offended if somebody burns the flag, or we would feel offended if somebody's stamping that flag, right? It's the same thing with faith and culture. It's something which is very personal and people follow it. So if somebody like us, animators and designers, are taking it and kind of modeling it in a way which is offensive to them, they are within their rights to feel offended and kind of raise their voices against your studio. So how do we not do that? So ethical consideration number one is being mindful that and acknowledging that these are concepts which are very pious, holy, and people actually deal with it every day. Ethical consideration number two is validation. Like you need to validate the use of those culture elements is actually appropriate, right? How do you do that? You talk to people, you invite people who practice that culture and say, hey, do you think this is fine? Do you think I can use this? Is this the right way to do it? You call this UX research, where you're doing research to understand the experience. So that's one way we can actually go about it, right? So those are two ethical considerations I would say we would need to keep in mind while dealing with culture, faith, and religion. The thing with animation, at least, is you don't let people control. Um, Animation is something you watch, but like for video games, what you do is you give people the ability to control the character. So even if you have a god and people are controlling the character, they could purposefully go and bang their head to the wall and make it offensive for other people who are watching. So you want to make sure the agency which you give these players is also very controlled and limited. So yeah, these are the three ethical considerations I would tell to keep in mind before we dive in.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Do you have anything else you want to say before we go into more like advice and recommendation? Or
Yeah, so I think if you guys are looking to become animators, a good experience for you would be to talk to people from different cultures, understand what is important to them, like what kind of food is important to them, right? What is important to them about their faith. The more you learn about different people, the more better as animators you can become, where you're able to understand people and you're able to understand what is important to them. You're able to understand what is offensive to them. And then as you develop this mental model of people, it'll start reflecting in your work, and it makes you like do better animation, which is much more relatable to people. So my 2 cents of advice are possibly talk to people, understand them, become a people person before you become an animator. Once you become a much more of a people's person, you would know what you want to animate and how you want to animate it. Possibly the last step of advice would be talk to people even when you're evaluating your product. Like once you made your animation, try to get feedback from people and see you're respectful to their cultures. Are you not offending them? These are things you would might want to factor in um, while you're creating your animation or in the process of creating your animation. So maybe in the process of creating your animation, incorporate the first goal to talk to people, and also at the end, kind of evaluate it with the same set of stakeholders. So that might help you become more safe and good animators, I guess.
Mhm.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you believe that video games can unite and people and make new friends, like playing online games?
Yeah, I think so. I have had great friends who I met playing Call of Duty. So I strongly believe that. So you will find 2 kinds of people everywhere. There'll be good people who you can make friends and they're actually very nice. And then there are bad people who are just toxic in video games because everybody in video games is behind an avatar. You do not know the real person. So they're free to like use bad words or be toxic, and they can do that. But it's up to us to avoid those people and actually find good people. If you go to communities like Reddit, you will actually see a lot of people who've made friends just because they play games. Though games you play alone in your own room, because of the internet, it's just a larger community. And things like Xbox Live, PS5 Live, Discord, these are all areas where you can actually make a lot of friends through games. And I strongly believe things like religion and culture, currently, which cause a lot of wars across the world. If people play more video games, I feel there'll be less wars because you just understand, okay, they're just players too. They're just nice people too who just have fun by playing games, and everybody becomes better friends. So I believe if with appropriate moderation in terms of like making sure toxic people are not playing those games, we can actually achieve a place where we can make friends. And also it brings down the gender stereotypes, like because you're playing video games and it's just a skill-based game. It could be male, female, whatnot. You can actually learn that everybody is equal and you can actually give equal opportunity to everyone. So you can make great friends playing through games. But you want to make sure as kids, we want to play the most appropriate games, age-affiliated games. There's supervision. You're not playing games which are like toxic. So yeah, if you keep these in mind, I think you'll make great friends through video games.
Does anyone else have questions? Okay. Would you have any recommendations on like resources for those who would want to explore this topic further?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, I would say do consider going through some of my papers. Maybe they're on Google Scholar, and not just because they're my papers, because I've cited a lot of people who have done great work in this field already. So it's good to learn about what they've been doing and how to go about it. Maybe a good first step for all of you starting out, maybe just go to YouTube and type religion in video games and see what are the different ways religion is being used in video games. What are people talking about? So when you talk about religion in video games, it's not just about using religious elements in video games, but it's also using video games for religion, like to teach Christianity, to teach the Bible, or to teach Islam, or whatever. So I think that would be a good first step. Read some papers. If they're too complex, maybe just watch some YouTube videos and kind of like do a little exercise for yourself. Like find video games which have religious elements, or start looking at video games from a religious lens and see, hey, where is religion in this game? And then you'll be able to figure out elements and you'll be able to develop that mindset of identifying culture, identifying religion, or maybe take a character or make a game for yourself. Like, maybe a group activity could be like 2, 3 people get together and form teams, and you make a game with religious elements in it and see what are different elements in religion you can incorporate in the game. It doesn't have to be a real game. It could just be like a paper prototype or an animation. Maybe as animators, you can make an animation about how don't take your own religion, but try to follow some of the religion so that you can step into their shoes and practice that mindset of stepping into other people's shoes and try to make an animation. So getting familiarized with hands-on exercises might actually help you do much better. I personally feel. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Maybe, or would you maybe have like any recommendations on like summer programs or extended studies programs for middle school and high schoolers?
Yeah, one thing I would strongly recommend is like reach out to professors for high school, especially if you're in the Bay Area. You have UC Santa Cruz, you have the UCs, which are always there to help, and especially Santa Cruz because we are great at games and animation. So I would strongly recommend reaching out to professors and faculty in UC Santa Cruz and see if this is something you would like to work on. If not just like religion, there's so many other ways you can work in video games, like AI for AI in education, animations through AI and whatnot. There's a whole lot of things you can do. So maybe for undergrad, for high school students, I would strongly recommend reaching out to professors to participate in research, pick up independent projects, and see if you can create animations for like causes, like understand societies outside the world, not just religion. There could be so many problems across the globe, like malnutrition or malaria, dengue, whatever. And you're creating animations to bring awareness. So focus on causes across the globe and see how your work can best align with solving those problems. And I'm sure you'll find a lot of people reach out to you about contributing or collaborating with each other. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Does anyone else have questions? Okay. Do you think we missed something and you wanted to like talk about or?
No, I think we've covered a good portion of my work. So there are more details in terms of like statistics and all, which we can dive into some point later. But like, I don't want to go into the math and things. I just wanted to keep it superficial in terms of giving what things we're working on, and how this whole field is structured. And this is what we do in a PhD, basically, kind of finding problems, kind of understanding how we can help solve those problems. Um, yeah, so that's pretty much what I had to say.
Mhm. Okay, so Zoom is saying that it will close down in a couple minutes, and we covered about every question that we wanted to ask, if anybody also had anything else. So we'd like to really thank you for this like great like conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. Yeah. So your insights on like culture and face and like storytelling to like shape characters and like interactive experiences like gave us like it was really like new perspective on this like creative process. It's really fascinating. So we really appreciate your generosity in answering our questions. Thank you so much. Uh, and hopefully this is just a beginning of more conversations about the intersection of culture, storytelling, and animation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I hope I was helpful in some way and you guys can pick up from there. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you
Okay.
so much. If you're eating, well, have a good lunch too.
Thank you so much. Have a good day, guys.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.